and respected Professor Dilip Kuke, Vice Chancellor of MNLU, respected Registrar Sir, respected Professor Martin Davis, Honorable Professor of Maritime Law, Admiralty Law Institute at Tolane. Now, distinguished guests and audience, I thank MNLU for giving Directorate General of Shipping an opportunity to give a presentation in this August forum. Prior to me, respected Professor Davis has already explained everything what is available regarding GHG emission. But let me try what I can tell you different about GHG emission. Now, why this worry about GHG emission from shipping? The first question which comes to my mind. We all know that shipping is the most environment friendly mode of transport, but yet there is lot of hue and cry about decarbonization of shipping. The reason is that there was a GHG study carried out by IMO in 2014 called third IMO GHG study. The study estimated that between 2007 and 12, the shipping emitted approximately 1,000 metric tons of CO2 per year, and which accounts for roughly 3.1% of annual global CO2 emissions. The study also shows that the business as usual scenario, this total gross CO2 emissions may increase up to 120% of 2008 level by 2050. And if other sectors of the economy reduce emissions to keep the global temperature increase below 2 degrees centigrade, shipping could represent some 10% of global GHG emission. So there was a hurry because shipping is very fragmented industry. You have a lot of players. The shipping is not in the hands of few top companies in the world. You have fragmented players in the shipping, and it's not easy to decarbonize shipping unless we start early. Now, what is IMO strategy? I have come to the same slide which Professor Davis has already shown, but my aspect is different over in this slide. All the calculations are made from 2008 as a base year. And what we are saying, by 2030, we will reduce 40% carbon intensity of the ship as it was in 2008. And by 2050, in case we have to reduce gross emissions from ships by 50%, we have to achieve a 70% reduction target, CII reduction target. Now, 70% reduction target is not achievable, not easily achievable by shipping, as we will see next slide. Now, whatever be the scenario, whatever we try to do the improvement in the efficiency of the ship, we cannot achieve 70% unless there are alternative fuels in the market. What I meant by alternative fuels, these are those fuels which reduce the GHG emissions less than the fossil fuels. Now, IMO has predicted, now there are three aspects. If we see our next slide, merchant shipping is comprising of about 50,000 to 60,000 vessels. The challenges are, whatever we do, the studies suggest that in business as usual scenario. So what I am trying to say is, the present vessels which are entering into the global merchant fleet, international merchant fleet, are mainly on fossil fuel. So these vessels are going to stay for another 30 years. And when we are thinking about 70% reduction to achieve our goal of 50% reduction from 2008 level, we have to not only think of bringing alternative fuel ships run fuel in picture, but also ensure that there is a possibility of emission reduction from these ships. So how will we go about emission reduction? There are a lot of challenges in the sector. The first challenge is the present generation of ships which are there in the scenario fossil run. They have to reduce their emission by 70% at least from 2008 level by 2050. Is there any scope for improvement of such a reduction? Is there any scope for such a reduction? Let us see in our next slide. I will go, what are the barriers now? Can alternate fuel ship enter into picture now? I don't think so. As you can see, there are a lot of technological challenges which are there, and unless we remove these challenges and scale these fuels, alternate fuels, to be adapted to international sea-going ships, we are unable to bring any alternate fuel run ship in near future. So what is IMO has done? IMO has to carry out some research and development to scale up adoption of these alternate fuels. Now the second challenge is this: when we are talking about alternate fuels, we are actually at present, the whole IMO regulations are only concerned about GHG emission from ship. But when we talk about alternate fuel or zero carbon fuel, it should not happen that in order to reduce emissions from ships, we increase emissions from in some other sector of the ship, some other sector. That is why we have to think about life cycle emission. That is from well to wake. Well to tank is the land side emissions, and tank to wake is the ship side emissions. If we try to produce ammonia from LNG, then we have enough carbon emissions. We have also methane emissions, and it should not happen that on ship by using ammonia we don't give any emissions. There is no emission, but on the other side there are emissions on the land side during production and transportation of ammonia. And the second thing is IMO should also concentrate about CO2, the life cycle emissions of CO2, and not only ship emissions of the greenhouse gases. Now, the second is lot of these alternative fuels have other emissions. They don't emit CO2, but they emit other GHG, such as nitrogen dioxide, ammonia is emitting, or methane, LNG is emitting. These are much more. These are the gases which have higher global warming potential than even fossil fuel, even carbon dioxide. And it is important that the IMO should also concentrate on these other GHG gases rather than only concentrating about the CO2 emissions from ship. This is another barrier which IMO has to pass before this shipping can be decarbonized. As I earlier said you, the first barrier is that existing ships which are coming into market are run by fossil fuel. They will be there in the market for 30 years. We have to think about their decarbonization. If we have to achieve our goal of 50% gross emission reduction in business as usual scenario by 2050 from 2008 levels, then progressively emissions from these ships also has to be reduced. But can these ships alone are able to reduce that emission levels by 70% per ship? Let us go to another slide. The other barrier to alternate fuel entry is the price of alternate fuel. If we see at present day, VLSFO is $540 per ton, while methanol is only it's approximately $542 per ton. But when we consider the energy density, the energy given by 2 tons of methanol is equal to energy given by 1 ton of VLSFO. And actually, when we take equivalent energy content, the VLSFO is costing almost half of methanol. So why will a ship owner take a fuel which is costing him twice what VLSFO is costing? This is another barrier. How to get away with this barrier? It is another thought in the mind of IMO. Now the third barriers are the commercial barriers. What are these barriers? The employment risks. Will any charter want to employ these alternate fuel vessels which are highly costly? They have high capital cost. They run on alternate fuels which are also costly. So we have to get away with this barrier, and it is important that supply chains and the things like Walmart should ask for green supply chains, and then only these vessels will be able to get long-term vessel employment contract. Then second, even if I get a long-term employment contract, and even my ship is alternate fuel, will I be able to get fuel available at all ports around the world? Whether the infrastructure, the port side will be set for supplying bunkering alternate fuel to these ships, that is another problem. For liner shipping, this can be easily handled by having long-term commercial contract for supply when they are going to fixed port. But when you are doing tram shipping, you don't know which ports you are going, and it is very difficult to know unless the world over there are facilities set up for supply. It's very difficult it is a barrier for ship owner to get such a fuel. Then there is a fuel price risk, as I have already explained. So how market can correct it? Should we go for carbon tax, as Professor Davis has already explained? These are the three risks which we have to cover, which IMO has to think about before IMO can achieve its goal of 50% reduction from 2008 level. But here one question comes to my mind. IMO is only regulating shipping. IMO is not regulating the ports. So can IMO have any mandate to set up bunkering facilities as ports? Let us see in our slide. Now, there is a huge role played by ports in the decarbonization. We know existing ship will keep on running on fossil fuel for next 30 years. They have to achieve 70% reduction from 2008 carbon intensity levels by 2050. Alone, these ships will not be able to achieve that reduction unless the port facilitates them. How the port will facilitate them? By reducing the vessel waiting time, by implementing just-in-time arrival or virtual arrival, by providing shore power to these ships when they are at the port from renewable source of energy. Then IMO has done a statistic analysis and has come to a conclusion that alternate fuel ships should start entering into the market by 2030 if IMO has to achieve its target of 50% reduction. Now, that means there has to be an infrastructure which has to be set up by these ports for supplying of such alternate fuels. So all these things have to be set up by ports on which IMO does not have any control. So now let me go through this. But IMO has kept everything in mind while devising its IMO greenhouse GHG policy. IMO has said that we will try to increase the energy efficiency of new vessels which are coming further. And that is why they are trying to enhance the energy efficiency and making sure that new vessels which are coming are able to achieve 70% reduction target by 2050. For existing ships, they are employing methods like EEXI, which is actually a speed reduction methodology to increase their efficiency or to reduce the fuel consumption. Then they are trying to address fugitive emissions from engines like methane and VOC emissions. And now all these things they are trying to do because any ships which are trying to come now will stay for another 25 to 30 years. And unless we try and reduce their emissions by CII by some methodology, we will not be able to achieve our targets. It's the business as usual case is unpredictable. But whatever worst scenario we have taken, we need 70% deep cuts from existing vessels. Now, new fuels, we don't know which new fuel is good. LNG people say is an alternative fuel, but there are studies which suggest that methane emissions can negate the impact of LNG on CO2 emissions. So still we are in a stage where ship owner does not know whether the fuel is actually an alternate fuel, how much emission it is giving at land side, and there is a need for IMO to conduct some research and development. And accordingly, as I explained earlier, IMO in its policy as a short-term measure includes setting up of a IMRB or International Maritime Research Board. Again, I have told you how life cycle emissions are the most important factor when we think about alternate fuel. Again, IMO has kept in its initial policy life cycle emission or carbon intensity guidelines for all ships. And we have seen port will play a huge role in coming days to reduce CII of existing ships. And IMO does not have any say on ports, but IMO will encourage ports to develop facilitate reduction of GHG emission from shipping. That is also part of IMO initial GSG policy. Now, medium-term measure. In medium-term measure, IMO has also put in its initial GSG policy market-based measure and development. And after 2030, slowly, progressively, IMO will ensure that more ships with net zero carbon or zero carbon are coming into cross-ocean, are being used for cross-ocean passages. Now, there is a huge debate now going at IMO regarding setting up of IMRB. Countries like India are saying IMRB is in effect a carbon tax. But countries like, there are other countries which are saying that no, IMRB is there for setting up, carrying out research and development activities as is there in IMO initial GSG policy. But is it a carbon tax? Let us debate about it. IMRB is intended to be funded by something called carbon tax. The amount of tax will depend whether it's a market-based measure or not. If the tax is too low, then it will not cover the price differential between the alternative fuel cost and the fossil fuel cost, and it can still be thought of as a research and development money to be collected from shipping. But then again, there is a debate how the benefits of IMRB is going to be distributed among various states, and the debate is going on. And in next MEPC 77, this is going to be taken up as a measure. And lot of countries are asking each other status view on this setting up of IMRB board. I will, due to shortage of time, I will not go much in this. Now, what is the Indian National Action Plan? We have drawn this National Action Plan for green shipping last year during COVID times. Now we knew that MARPOL Annex 6 is not applicable, is applicable only for international shipping. And it's not applicable for coastal shipping. It's not mandatory to implement MARPOL Annex 6 on coastal shipping. But the problem is, as the progressively IMO regulations are tightened, more and more international ships will go out of business. And all these ships which are emitting more pollutants will start coming on coast and flying and increase our GSG emissions. Any fuel used on coastal shipping comes under national GSG inventories as per IPCC, and our national emissions will start going up. So we thought that we will implement MARPOL Annex 6 for all ships, whether running on coastal or international. Now, second question is, Indian fleet has an average age of 18 years, and as more and more old ships come and start running on our coast, our emissions start increasing. So we have come out with a policy that we will only allow, we will not allow more than 10 years of age vessels from 2030 onwards. That is also in part of our IMO GSG National Action Plan. As you can say, we move towards second-hand ships coming to Indian flag to be at least IMO GSG Phase 2 certified. Now the green ports, we all know there is a huge role played by ports. I have already explained. So we have put shore power supply, just-in-time arrival, all that in our National Action Plan for green shipping. This has been drawn taking into account the IMO initial GSG policy. Now, Maritime Vision document is there. As you can see, if you are supplying shore power, but it is not from renewable source, you are actually transmitting emissions from one place to another place. So it is important that the shore power which is supplied to ships is also from renewable sources, and accordingly ports have been given target to ensure that by 2030 at least 60% of their total energy demand is from renewable sources. Then green ports, there are a lot of targets given in Maritime Vision regarding the green ports, conversion of their vehicles into alternate fuels or electric vehicles. Then the target has been given to all major ports to supply shore power to visiting ships in 3 phases. It is already there in our Maritime Vision document, and already JNPT has given a tender or consultancy and supply of shore power. Mumbai port is also looking to supply shore power fast. Lot of passenger vessels are coming to Mumbai ports. Then bunkering facilities have to be created, LNG bunkering at select ports by 2028. That is also part of our National Action Plan and also part of our Maritime Vision document. All this is developed taking into account the IMO initial GSG policy. Now, what are the steps taken by India? India has taken a number of steps. India has completed trials on biofuels with 20% biofuel blends. The results are successful. The second generation biofuels are used, and we are going to come out shortly with a policy on biofuels in India. We will implement IMO GSG regulations on coastal ships that we have already decided. Merchant shipping bill is underway, and there are powers given to central government to put prescribed conditions for registration, and age registration may be one of the norms. India is working with IMO Green Voice 2050 team, and there is a pilot project going to take place in India which can be scaled up to a business case for green shipping. Directorate is working with JNPT to develop the infrastructure and regulatory mechanism for supply of shore power to visiting ships. All ships, ocean going, foreign going, exim trade, all ships. We have already issued a SOP for shore power to visiting ships for up to 150 kilowatts. And we believe that the steps taken in near future will help India achieve its aim of zero carbon, IMO aim of zero carbon shipping by end of the century. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your words of wisdom and guidance, and this will surely be going to encourage us in our future. Now I'll request our Assistant Professor and Coordinator at the Center of Maritime Law and Research at Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai, the convener of today's event, Mr. Yashvardhan sir, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Rehana. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Distinguished Professor Martin Davis, Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Dilip Uke, Shri Vikrant Rai, Deputy Director, DG Shipping Office, Professor Anil Barya, Registrar, other dignitaries participating from across the world, faculty members and seafarers, and most importantly, our academic brigade of researchers and students. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. To begin with, I must say that decarbonization is the present pulse of the shipping world. And yes, even this is also an understatement, as Professor Martin has been saying so. The ongoing decarbonization drive is quite demanding, especially for the developing and the least developed countries. Even more true is that it poses humongous challenges for all the stakeholders of the shipping industry, perhaps more eminently for the ship owners. But equally it can be said that the challenge of climate change is for the entire mankind. It has posed an existential threat. But don't you think that the threat of this climate change, or the challenge of this climate change, outweighs the challenges of the shipping world in addressing them? When the means of sustainable shipping will steer us towards the end of building a sustainable planet, who would not like to board that progressive ship? Who would not like to see herself contributing to it and be a part of that great green reform? Talking about our own country, where we are currently celebrating 75 years of independence as Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav under the able leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, I must say in assuring terms about our own commitment for cutting carbon emissions. With the changing perceptions of Indians in the new India and the evolving Indian instinct of looking at the challenges and the adversities annexed to it as nothing but an opportunity to contribute for the betterment of the environment and humanity, we will ensure the fulfillment of our climate commitment. Now let me share with all of you a very recent update which personally fills me with great pride and satisfaction, and it will also serve as a testament of our climate commitment. When the intergovernmental organizations, both United Nations and IMO, various non-governmental organizations like Green Voyage, all are contemplating for cooperation and collaboration for cutting the carbon emissions and for decarbonization. Here in India, Tata Steel Company has been taking a benign step towards decarbonization by joining the Sea Cargo Charter, and it has done so on the 3rd September 2021. The Tata Steel Company becomes the first steel producing signatory of the Sea Cargo Charter in the world for reducing the environmental impact of the global seaborne cargo. Finally, before we end our session, I must formally thank all of you for joining us. I must say that it is my proud privilege to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the Center for Maritime Law, MNLU Mumbai, and the DG Shipping Government of India. I must express my sincere gratitude once again to Professor Martin Davis, who, despite all odds, and I mean it in all terms, ensured through his progressive decarbonization talk that the spirit of sustainable shipping must remain high. World Maritime Day and his birthday on the same day may be a coincidence for some of you, but for me, it will always be beyond that. It only speaks volumes about his own commitment to the maritime world. Sir has comprehensively covered the issue of decarbonization, ranging from technical issues to financial issues. Thank you very much, sir. We are grateful to Shri Vikrant Rai sir for not only delivering an insightful technical talk about decarbonization, and that too from the developing countries' perspective of the shipping industry, but also for his contributions in building cooperation at the IMO by articulating India's stand on the decarbonization drive. For this, even the developing countries and the least developed countries of the shipping community must be relying on his efforts and expressing their thanks. With Vikrant Rai sir, we were able to ensure a diversity in our talks. We are thankful to our captain, as Dehana has designated Professor Dilip Utke sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor of our university, for steering us towards a sustainable shipping discourse. We hope to continue banking on his leadership for advancing such progressive discourse. I would like to express my appreciation and thanks for the support extended by the Office of Registrar, in particular Professor Anil Varyat, who is also our acting registrar. I will be failing in my duty if I don't acknowledge the support which has been rendered by the administrative team led by Professor Varyat, and in particular the support of Manohar sir for extending his all technical support. I must also express my sincere appreciation to Ash Mohammed sir, Deputy Director General of DG Shipping, for extending his ever-continuing unconditional support to the center, and especially to Sindhura ma'am for fixing the technical glitches which Vikrant Rai sir was facing. I would like to thank once again to all the attendees, including the alumnus from the Tulane University. Thank you very much for giving us your time. On this note, we formally end our session, and we look forward to have all of you in the session in the campus also, sir.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. You can leave now.